firstly, you're the boss, not the AI. You should know exactly how it's going to respond to everything, whether it's a chatbot or whether it's Gen AI or whatever we come on to. I think you should know what the output of the AI is going to be. And then, the second part, as you just said, is like the data that you're essentially putting into the AI is everything. Like that is the value. So
you're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-commerce strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-commerce strategy, leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify, a very topical discussion today. We're going to be talking about the current state of AI in e-commerce. Nobody's talking about AI, obviously, and where we're headed with visual content generation. So kind of a split in the episode, but the second bit's really important because this is one of the big growth areas, lots of practical insights. And we are welcoming back today Liam Quinn, who's a technical consultant. So, hey, Liam, good to have you back on the podcast.
hello, thanks for having me back.
Yep.
Paul's already slagged off the first one, so
I didn't remember it. Wasn't very memorable.
Yes. For everyone listening, Paul's comment when I reminded him we'd already had Liam on was, it wasn't very memorable. There we go. This one's going to be because not everyone's as cynical as you. Liam, let's get an intro because some people know you. You were previously around the technical side of Avon. You now work with Avon, still a consultancy capacity, but you run your own thing. And I think you're doing something quite interesting because I know you're doing lots of stuff, but one of the areas is you're building out some Shopify apps to help retailers leverage what we're talking about today, which is the potential of AI. So do you want to give people a bit more of a flavour of what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, perfect. That was a good intro. But I was technical director, so it's just about 5-year anniversary, Paul, actually, of us working together. But for the last sort of 4 months, I'm splitting my time now between still doing consulting at Avon and building out products. So sort of digital products with the core of AI. Currently there's a couple of those that hopefully be imminently released, but Shopify apps where it's essentially trying to bring AI to merchants that either haven't got the resource or time or the understanding of like how to get the best out of it. So just simplifying and bringing the value to brands and businesses.
Great. So I'll ask the first question. So I guess obviously lots of brands have been talking about AI and, we work with lots of different teams within lots of different businesses that have different levels of understanding. Some have played around with it. Some have built their own kind of products on top of things like OpenAI. You speak to a lot more people than I do around this topic. What do you think the current state is for brands and how have you seen adoption and usage so far? And also have you seen much or how quickly are you seeing that growing?
Yeah, I think it still feels super early for especially in e-com for some reason, but I think still feels really early in terms of the adoption against the rate of change and improvement in AI. So it feels like AI is moving at a steeper trajectory than I've seen a lot of brands really utilizing, aside from everybody using ChatGPT and things like that. But it's definitely, I think over the last 6 months, we've definitely started to see adoption. We've had clients, Paul, I think over 6 months ago, there was people that were dabbling with it and playing with a few different things and experimenting. In the last 6 months, we've probably seen production use on more and more brands. So I think it is increasing, just still early. I think so. We've seen a couple of clients doing a few different things, but there's been examples like Mango's the high profile brand where they experimented 6 months or so ago with Gen AI imagery and then turned out to be really successful. And I think they're continuing use and factoring that into their processes. I think it's definitely on the increase. But there's still a lot of room to go there.
I think of our clients' current bodies probably maybe done the coolest, or not necessarily the coolest thing, but they use it the most in terms of day in, day out. So they work with Nolo, who we've had on before, Ollie Rhodes. And they're doing quite a lot around translation, QA of content, like highlighting of content where certain USPs aren't mentioned, and various other kind of bits within their kind of PLM, PIM workflows. And then World of Books was another one we had on recently that we're using it more for content generation.
Yeah, I was going to go on to like the current body example, which you obviously agree with that one, but yeah, already. No, we'll come back onto that. But I think like Andrew at current body actually is like, I was thinking about earlier, is a good yardstick of the direction that the industry moves. I think like he's got, he's quite a on like, where things are going tech wise. And I think, the fact that they're adopting it more and more in the processes is like an indication for some other brands.
And we'll come on to like third parties and how, because I think some of the stuff that people are doing early right now, a lot of third parties are like starting to enter the market to cover some, to make some of those areas a bit easier to kind of break into. But I guess second question, so kind of following on from that, where do you see the biggest opportunities short term for kind of e-commerce brands and businesses in terms of like investing into different areas of AI?
Yeah, I think I don't really like the question. Like a few people ask this, and it's like, what's the obvious quick wins? But I think more because I think eventually we get to a point where AI is like laid through all aspects and processes through a brand, and actually the biggest value completely depends on like the makeup of the team, processes that brand goes through, all of their operations. So yeah, I think it can be completely varied in terms of like highest value return for different brands. But I think some of the obvious ones, like customer service, is probably the obvious area where we've seen like biggest adoption, and that just makes perfect sense for the majority of brands to be moving to a customer service suite that's more efficient and takes off a lot of the manual effort. I think other areas like data entry and validation, we've started to see more like managing translations, you said, as part of that. I think anything where there's like a lot of manual effort and the requirements like accuracy and efficiency will be picked up by AI. So yeah, I think the data entry, validation, like reporting, we've seen on Census, Paul, like that reporting side is sort of an easy entry point. So brands where, they've got the post-purchase survey, some of the brands get 10, 20,000 responses a month, where it's actually just too much for, even if you had a human sat there full time working through that, it's firstly probably not realistic for them to get through. Secondly, you can now do that with AI more efficiently, more accurately, and sort of get better results anyway. So yeah, that side, I think there are a few of the areas right now that we're seeing.
One sub point that I wanted to make, just as like a general frustration with AI for customer service, I've had 2 horrendous experiences recently with companies that I think historically would have been way better. And obviously using AI is way more efficient and there's lots of productivity gains, etc. One was flannels. So I bought a hat and it's significantly cheaper on flannels. So I bought it through flannels. And then when I went to return it, because it's tiny, which is, but when I went to return it, it didn't recognize my number. So I started the only route, which was live chat. And it was all AI and the whole thing was terrible. And then in the end, I found an email. I went through email and like all the cons just didn't make sense. There was like no context. So whilst there's clearly a huge opportunity here and people are doing loads of cool stuff in this space, I think that, and the other one was going to be hotels.com, where it's just really poorly, it just didn't really understand most types of queries that I put in front of it. I feel like there's a real risk to brands creating a really negative experience here as well, as alongside the obvious opportunity.
I think the issue is like a lot of the early, people getting in early implementing AI, it's like everything chatbot focused. And then it's quite easy to stick a chatbot on site that's like not trained with customer data, not trained with brand data, and it's technically working, but actually there's nothing behind it other than sort of
Exactly.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, and the thing is, AI doesn't cover over bad process and bad data and bad information. And if people put things in without thinking through the user journey and thinking through the insight and knowledge that's needed to educate these models to be able to respond effectively, this is where I think the big maturity has to happen. Is these tools are amazing, but you can't just let them loose and hope they work. You've got to rigorously control and test them. I know a couple of brands who turned off their AI chatbots because they were getting loads of complaints from customers about the quality of response and inaccuracy in response as well. And especially when you've got brands that have got specific product compliance requirements as well, you have to be very careful.
Yeah, I think 100%. It's maybe and on this year, more people, I think, will getting to the point where it's like not just hand everything over to AI and hope that it does really well. It's like firstly, you're the boss, not the AI. Like you should know exactly how it's going to respond to everything, whether it's a chatbot or whether it's Gen AI or whatever we come on to. I think you should know what the output of the AI is going to be. And then, the second part, as you just said, is like the data that you're essentially putting into the AI is everything. Like that is the value. So if you have put no data in, or it's got access to nothing, then it is going to be just completely generic.
Yeah, I remember having that conversation with Nile about their AI live Q&A thing on the PDP's Asklo, and that was the whole thing. Is the bot is really intelligent in its ability to understand and process the data and understand the different types of data that sit within it, attributes, categories, you name it, and then interpret the natural language of the customer. But if the source data is crap or inaccurate, and let's face it, we've worked with a lot of brands who might be very good at what they're doing in terms of growth, but there's always data inaccuracy. There's always product issues where the quality is not good enough. So yeah, 100%. It's often what underpins this is the bit that needs the focus initially. But let's move on to the creative, because we're not going to do the operational side today. And actually, we're going to do a mini series in the not too distant where we're going to drill into some more of that operational back end stuff where AI is doing cool things like warehousing wise, etc. But let's talk about like content. I think this is an area that a lot of brands, e-commerce teams are interested in getting smarter in terms of their process, being able to rapidly speed up output as well. And I know you've done a lot of work and you've done a lot of research around visual content generation. Where's your head at the moment? Like how can or should brands be using AI from a visual content generation point of view at the moment? What's the potential?
I think I think over the last, I've been, let's say 12 months ago, when more and more bits of Gen AI came out, I've been sort of dabbling with it since then, where actually at the time it's like, this is quite cool, there's some interesting things, but for a brand, there's like no consistency, little accuracy, and it wasn't really usable. I think it's massively gone under the radar how far it has come over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of what you could, with the right effort and sort of time and effort put in, the output that you can get from Gen AI automated imagery and videos in particular, and written content as well. I think the written content's a bit more, there's a bit more examples out there of people using it, and it's gone from just, ChatGPT, again, generic ChatGPT descriptions that people put on site and weren't very good, so now you can be trained completely on like tone of voice, what sort of language the brand uses, even like, localized like Fred Perry might use a different tone of voice and language in different areas of the world or areas of England. The written content you could get now is like heavily trained on that, can be really accurate. And yeah, image and video now as well. So I think there's still, like me and Paul were talking about before, I think for some like a Frankie shop or a self-portrait, I think you still get the material's not 100% accurate, or the, certain bits not 100% accurate to be used overly on site. But I think right now it's probably for 80% of brands, you could get an end result that's like super usable, a lot more cost effective, a lot quicker than trying to produce it yourself.
Yeah, so a couple of things I found really interesting is you're saying like the quality of the tech has increased rapidly. It's that classic curve of tech improvements, isn't it? It starts and it gets up rapidly, and actually human adoption lags. Like Adobe, you got big businesses like Adobe launching Firefly to do Gen AI videos and images, and some of the quality I've seen, I think it's only on beta, I think you have to be an customer and apply for it, but some of the quality I've seen in the outputs for some of the animated videos is really crystal clear and sharp. I don't know about the brand lens control over on top of it, but the quality of the videos is good. And there's some other nice use cases that have come out in the last 6-12 months for brands or businesses who are using this as part of their creative process. I think Next are one of the first, and Next run a really good YouTube channel. They talk about what they're up to within the business, I really like. And one of them was they've used Gen AI to create product concepts for new lines, and then they test those out on their customers to see whether the designs are popular, not popular, what they like, dislike, and they fine tune that, and that then informs their product and planning and product buy-in process, which I think is really, really smart.
Yeah, I think even when we touched on, like these a self-portrait or a Frankie shop, maybe the premium brands where it's not 100% perfect for your main product gallery. I think there's still, I think a lot of people would be surprised the quality you could get, and for things like, blocks on site where it's more how you could style that product rather than it being like the main product image. And the other one that I think is probably the use case for right now is basically like meta ads or social ads. So being able to quickly output a lot of high quality testable assets that people might only see for seconds or minutes, and then doing that at much higher scale than you'd be able to manually do. I think that's probably a starting point. But I think there's I think that in the next 6 months we'll see a big change in that, because you can get like super high quality video and image now.
I think the difficulty we have, but we have obviously Vivant is very fashion focused, so we immediately go towards clothing and like model shots. But I think the opportunity for like consumer products, like even FMCG products, is much bigger. And like if you've got massive catalogs as well, some in dynamic product ads and everything else, I think there's going to be loads of opportunity there. And current limitation. So I just mentioned fashion, but like how far along do you think we are, and how kind of viable do you think the kind of outputs are for kind of like higher level, high fidelity, model shots, branded content, etc. And then what human elements do you feel, or like how could AI fit into a human workflow to achieve the optimal assets?
Yeah, I think, without going into a plug, I think what I've been working on is trying to simplify the process from a merchant or, like ecom director, whoever's managing it, to get that quality output. So I think you can, right now, with a reasonable amount of manual effort involved, like train on the brand and what style of photography you want to get output and get something like super usable. But I think the limitations are that bit of effort up front. So it does take effort. It does take a bit of manual input and training and a few different steps to get there. So I think trying to simplify that. I think the other limitations have been like consistency, and then probably brand. So, accuracy on really complex designs or like, brand logos and things on products. But I think there is ways around those. So it's trying to solve those problems in a way that doesn't take huge amounts of efforts for the team. And I think right now you can get around those. I think in 6 months' time, that won't be an issue that's sort of even being talked about now.
So I've got a general question on this. And Paul, I know you have lots to say because you work with a lot of creative teams. I know you're also very hot on creative execution when people are like launching websites as well, down to the control of the design and the visual sharpness of it. And AI can generate images. We all know it can. It can generate images from prompt. It can take image inputs from you and it can embellish them. There are different ways that you can use this tech. But fundamentally, each business has a different set of brand controls, brand guidelines, and also how stringent they are within the what you can do within those creative rules. And some are completely obsessive to the last pixel, and others are a bit more loose and free. So my general question is about what is the role of creative direction alongside AI? What type of expertise, what type of people are needed to make sure that this is executed well, not just technically, because there's a technology expertise, but there's the visual oversight. What do people need to think about? And from what you're seeing, how are people handling this so they don't just let a load of wild stuff get out there?
You going first, Paul?
Well, I was gonna let you go first. You go first, and I'll add to it.
Yeah, I can go. I think I think there's obviously a lot of conversation around AI replacing jobs and like who's actually at risk and whatever. I think the like art director, creative director sort of roles are even more important for all of these. So I think while AI, and I think what we've just been talking about, you can get like at scale a lot of outputs to high quality. I think the bit that separates that going forward is the creative director, art director, that sort of role, overseeing it and actually achieving, again, going back to you're the boss, not the AI is not the boss, you're the boss. It's like actually achieving what the vision is, and AI is just actioning the task. I think one thing as an example, not really econ related, but that the Coca-Cola advert that everybody obviously like LinkedIn went wild for around Christmas time showed that the AI can technically now deliver, like it was pretty good quality in terms of literally the visual aspect of what it's outputting, but without that creative director role of what the point of it is and storytelling, the emotion of it, all that sort of thing, it's pointless and it's not a good end result.
I think a good example of an equivalent that a company put out there without the kind of consideration around like the brand elements was Toys R Us. So they created what was on paper a pretty good asset or like piece of content, but like they were missing so much of like the nostalgic elements of Toys R Us. I think it had the giraffe, but it didn't have the music, and like they were like, it was all just a bit rubbish. And I think that's a good example of where, like, I personally see the trend at the moment is creative direction, art direction, photography, like all of the technology around these areas, people are investing more in, and then it's more the development and like execution where people are investing less in. So I think for like the medium term, the role of like the people that are directing, their value will go up, and then execution will gradually disappear over time. But I would imagine over time that these like models will be trained on how to develop like, unique artistic direction. And I think over time, it'll require less time to deliver the projects that currently are completely bespoke and unique.
Yeah, I think there's I do think there'll be always that element of the human creative direction being needed, because some of it is like what's happening right now in the real world, and things like that factor into what that content should be. And I think even obviously content writers were probably the first one where it's like, our content writer is dead because AI can now do that. But actually good content writing is like nuanced to the brand, can reflect what's going on right now in the world, might be like, like subtle dig at a competitor or things like that, where actually, and then it's woven through not just the name of a product or a poster, but it's woven through everything. And I think that actually a good content writer is even more valuable, but using AI to sort of, run the task and get it done at scale.
It's also the governance piece, isn't it? There was a high profile case. I remember Paul Connor, he works for Vivon, had flagged this of one of the courier's live chat thing, that a user managed to get it to abuse itself and say that it's crap because whoever had set it up hadn't obviously put the right guardrails in place. And when using any Gen AI tool, you've got to first validate how that model is working, what AI it's using, what models it's using to drive that, and what safeguards there are in to stop them, because they all have to only be able to take from legitimate content. They can't use copyrighted content without explicit permission. So you have to make sure it's a legitimate tool. And the one area that I want to flag as well is this whole thing about copyright awareness, because I think it will probably surprise a few people, the fact that certain assets that you create using AI will not be copyrighted. They'll be public, which means anyone can then use them and they don't have to credit you. And obviously a big thing around brand is creating unique visual identity. It's creating assets that are yours that can't be used by competitors or other companies. And I know that I'm not going to profess to be a legal expert on this, so I'll tell people to read up properly. But what I do know from what I've been researching is that the law around AI generated content is developing. It's not rigid. And there are different rules depending on how much human input you've put in to create something that is unique, original, personalized, and can be demonstrated to have human creativity versus a model is created off of its base level of data and knowledge. So I think I don't hear conversations around the copyright impact. I don't know whether you guys hear or whether your brands are, but when I speak to people, I've never heard someone say, "Oh, when you think about the copyright potential of this." Do you hear that? Are people talking about it?
I've only heard it at the highest level within businesses around the other way. So more around people not wanting to hand over certain information to OpenAI due to the lack of copyright protection. But I think that will come more and more as it progresses, matures, and I think as some of these third parties drive more volume.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I think that's the only times I've really heard it being brought up. I think, it's a bit of a minefield. I think the issue is that legal side moves far, far slower than the sort of technology moves. So
there'll be it's always one high profile issue that starts the shift. So I'm sure that'll come at some point. So I guess next question, Liam, in your view, because this AI and all of the surrounding technologies with all the money involved, it feels like things are moving so quickly and to the point where you could build a technology and that it could be obsolete by the time it's out due to developments from another technology. Do you think brands should be investing now for the long term? Like, do you think they should be training models? Do you think they should be, structuring data in a way that allows you to layer on more AI? Yeah, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. So I think it's at the point where if a brand's not at least, planning or starting to think about how to implement AI and having a strategy around it, I think it'll be a competitive disadvantage by not doing it, or the competitors will be at a greater advantage having AI within their operations. So yeah, I think it definitely is a point where it should be started thinking about investing for the long term. I think you've just flagged like the main caveat, which is the AI models themselves, even OpenAI, Llama, all those models are every 2 months sort of look completely different, and I think then the tech that's built on top of those is changing constantly. So like I think brands definitely can't pick a technology and expect in 3 years' time, it's like, this is our 3 to 5 year plan. We've picked this piece of technology. Let's build for it. I think that's not going to happen. I think, the tech, even more so than ever, I think that tech landscape's changing more quickly. And there's like a need to be more agile and experimental in being involved in it, which I know James is typically the opposite view of the experimental nature. But I think, I think that is a big caveat, and it sort of has to be when we come back to like current body or whatever. There is that element of being sort of experimental. But I think going back to a point that you made earlier, James, the key part is actually the strategy around what our data is, where our data is held, what the format of all the data is, getting all that into a place where we know that AI, having a strategy for AI, and it is going to be based around all of the brand's data. So getting that into a place where it can be used, I think actually different to how tech has worked in, the last 10 years. I think that layer of what the technology is will change, but to get the data into a structure which, if it's one piece of tech or another, it doesn't matter, because you've got all that set up in the most optimal way is the key. So I think yes, but for bigger brands, I think starting with the data and working outwards rather than the tech working inwards.
And something our industry loves buzzwords. It always happens. Something new comes up, and AI on its own is not enough. We've got to have new buzzwords around AI, sub buzzwords, and lots of people are now talking about agentic, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. What is your view, apart from the fact that there's always an element of our industry that likes to create content around new ideas? What is this? Is this anything different? Is this something that people need to be aware of? Does this mean people need to think about the impact and use of AI in a different way?
Yeah, I think it's a great buzzword. It is like the perfect word for a buzzword. So I try and avoid using agentic. But I do think AI agents as a concept is almost like without being extreme, it's almost like when the internet's gone from like read only, here's pages of text, to the next evolution, which is like immersive, interactive, going both ways. So logins and being able to send, to the browser and all that sort of thing. So actually interactive. I think this is the similar switch where instead of just being pass in an input, get out an output, it's going to sort of open up, all the possibilities of basically handing over a problem and AI is thinking about it, going away and actually performing actions. I do think I think that sort of, out of everything we've talked about, I think this is the biggest game changer, not just in e-com, but in like technology. So I think it completely transforms how a lot of things sort of work under the hood.
I think part of it's driven also through commercial value, because I think a lot of businesses, maybe outside of some of the SaaS businesses, people are the biggest overhead. And I think investors have been particularly interested in that. I've had a couple of conversations with different people, and that's like the first thing that's been brought up. And I think, I think there's a lot of people now building products that are just trying to target roles. And then I also think like Mark Benioff and Salesforce have driven quite a lot of this with their like agent force stuff. I personally think, I think it is a bit of a buzzword, and I obviously mentioned it in my little predictions thing. I've obviously fallen into it. But I think that it is a good way to start personally if you do fall into that category where people are your biggest overhead.
I think we're so early in what the possibilities of the agent side are going to be. But I think it's interesting, like I was dabbling with a few things like a couple of months ago. I put a video on LinkedIn where it's basically using an AI agent to find a site, basically give it a budget and the products that I was after. And it's like, go and find a site, check if the price is in my budget. If so, add to cart and check out. And actually that, in theory, that's quite cool to see. But the theory, like the next step of that is actually if you get to a point where, for example, people are using that to do any of their online shopping, or, if we're using agents instead of doing it ourselves, you get to a point where there's a certain percentage of traffic hitting sites that are AI agents instead of humans. Like, at what point do everything to do with UX and CRO potentially shifts in the future? Like, at what point do you start optimizing a site for AI agents rather than humans? Yeah, I mean, these are long-term visions, but that's sort of what this opens the door to.
Proper dystopia, this.
Yeah.
And we always laugh at those because me and my like Luddite misery, who outside of my work doesn't want tech to do anything for me because I just want to stare at fields and mountains. Yeah. The vision of humans sitting at home asking an AI agent to go and do everything for them terrifies me. It's like this dystopian film where we're all at home and we're just basically not actually. It's like the Matrix. We're not awake. We're just a consciousness that's feeding AI.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a strange one, but I think the agent side opens the door to that sort of concept. So at some point down the line, that is likely where it gets to. So yeah.
I definitely find it interesting because I can see productivity wise, I can see why this is really beneficial to businesses, and you're already seeing this in the way that some of the customer service chatbots have the capability to execute specific commands. It's at the basic level of agentic, isn't it? Like, what's my order status? Well, okay, give me your order number. You're logged in. I validated that. Give me your order number. I've now gone and checked in whichever system I needed to look that up, find the status, return it, and tell you on the front end. So we've got it at the basic level. But yeah, I guess I'm intrigued to see where people want to take this and how many people actually want broader, as customers want a broader service versus just want fundamental questions answered. So yeah, intrigued to see. And then we always like to talk about tech on this one. We talked about a few tech companies during it, but in the context of like AI, Gen AI and content side, which third parties that you've looked at and have been working with, or other people have been working with, have most impressed you, and why?
Yeah, I think I've made a note of a couple of points, but I think to start with, so I'll throw Shopify out to start with, because not actually because what they've rolled out AI-wise is like mind-blowingly impressive currently, but I think the opposite of all the work that they've been doing on data structure and architecture of the platform and the way that the themes work and all of that side of the whole platform is literally like gearing up to be the perfect architectures for best use of AI or like optimal use of AI. So I think they will, I don't know when, but in the coming period of time, do some really interesting things. I actually saw, I hadn't spoke to you, Paul, but last week I saw a screenshot of a Shopify in the admin, basically a prompt of like, how do you want the theme? It was a prompt to generate a theme or liquid code essentially. So I think, that will be imminent.
I've heard little rumors of certain things that people within Shopify are doing and using. So yeah, I'm expecting like a major update at some point this year that I think will drive a lot of change. I think actually my point around the risk of developing tools for kind of around AI, I actually think in the commerce space, Shopify is a bit of a threat to anyone kind of building tools in this space.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think, not impressive as something right now that's mind blowing, but I think they're geared up to get there. I think one that I was going to mention is will be very under the radar, but Model Guide. So there's a couple of guys that were Commerce UI or involved in Commerce UI that it related to Askler. So I know you had the guys from Askler on a few weeks ago or months ago. But similar sort of concept. But the reason it's interesting is it's basically like super vertical specific. So it's a bit like the way, so answering questions dynamically similar to Askler, but is super like trained on just beauty. So it's modelguide.io, but it's like trained really heavily on the beauty industry, beauty and cosmetics. So yeah, and basically relevant to any who were, I think, the originals or something on there, but to cosmetic sites. So if you're like allergic to certain things or have a certain skin routine or something, it can dynamically answer questions that are like really personalized to what you need. I thought the fact that it's an app that's, instead of being sort of tech specific, is like vertical specific. I think that could be that could start being a trend where actually the tech side becomes easier to replicate, and when we go back to, again, data being the key to the success of the AI, I think products where they're like heavily focused on specific contexts like beauty is really interesting. So yeah, I thought I'll mention that one as something that could be a direction where products start to go.
Excellent. Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of our questions. Although I feel like I could just dive into a side topic of agentic AI for days now. For those of you listening, I hope it's been interesting. If you've got any questions and you want to probe Liam further on his views, or also what he's doing in the apps he's starting to build out, then reach out. We'll have the contact details on the landing page. It's also just look up Liam Quinn on LinkedIn. Liam, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Excellent. Take care, everybody. Until next week. You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast, hosted by experienced consultants James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.